Charles Lindbergh Jr. was 20 months old when someone took him from his nursery. The kidnapper climbed to a second floor window, carried the child into the darkness, and left behind a broken ladder, muddy footprints, and a ransom note. But the most disturbing detail came later. The child's body was found less than 5 miles from his own home. He had been dead for approximately 2 months. This was the Lindbergh Kidnapping, a crime that destroyed one family, terrified an entire nation, and changed American law forever. Before his son disappeared, Charles Lindbergh was one of the most famous men alive. In 1927, he completed the first solo nonstop flight across the Atlantic Ocean. Americans treated him as a hero. His name appeared in newspapers across the country. His face was recognized everywhere. Then in 1930, Charles and Anne Lindbergh welcomed their first child, Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr. The baby quickly became a symbol of the family's fame. Photographers followed the Lindberghs. Newspapers reported on their home, their movements, and their private life. The family eventually moved to a secluded estate near Hopewell, New Jersey. The property covered hundreds of acres. It was quiet, it was isolated, and it was supposed to be safe. But on the night of March 1st, 1932, the Lindbergh name became connected to something far darker than aviation. It became connected to a child who vanished from his crib. At approximately 9 o'clock that night, Charles Lindbergh Jr. was placed in his nursery. The child's nurse, Betty Gow, later discovered that he was missing. At first, she believed someone in the household had moved him. Then she searched the room. The crib was empty. The window was open. And on the windowsill was a handwritten note demanding $50,000. The note contained strange symbols and numerous spelling errors. It also gave instructions for delivering the money. The family searched the house. They searched the grounds. Then they found evidence beneath the nursery window, muddy footprints, a homemade wooden ladder. The ladder appeared to have broken during the climb. There were no fingerprints, no bloodstains, no clear trail leading away from the property. Only the evidence that someone had climbed up, entered the nursery, taken a child, and escaped into the night. The police were called. The New Jersey State Police assumed control of the investigation, but by then the crime scene had already begun to change. Family members, employees, police officers, reporters, and curious outsiders moved through the house. Evidence was disturbed. Possible clues were handled. And outside the Lindbergh estate, the press began gathering. The kidnapping became national news almost immediately. Newspapers printed the ransom note. They printed descriptions of the ladder. They printed every rumor, every theory, every supposed sighting. The public demanded answers. Some people claimed they had seen the child. Others claimed they knew the kidnapper. Many of those claims were false. The Lindbergh family received letters, telephone calls, and messages from strangers across the country. Some offered help, others demanded money. Many simply wanted to be close to the most famous crime in America. The investigation quickly expanded beyond New Jersey. The kidnapper sent additional ransom notes. The demand increased from $50,000 to $70,000, but the child was never returned. Charles Lindbergh's attorney attempted to organize negotiations. Then a retired school principal from the Bronx stepped forward. His name was Dr. John F. Condon. He published an offer in the newspaper, promising to act as an intermediary. The kidnapper accepted. Condon began using the name Jaffe in newspaper advertisements. For weeks, he communicated with a person who called himself John. The messages were passed through newspaper columns, anonymous telephone calls, taxi drivers, and hidden notes. The crime was no longer confined to one nursery. It had spread across the entire nation. On the night of April 2nd, 1932, Dr. Condon met the man called himself John near Woodland Cemetery in the Bronx. The kidnapper demanded ransom money. In exchange, he promised information about the child. Condon delivered $50,000 in gold certificates. The money was placed inside a wooden box. The stranger handed Condon a receipt and a note. The note claimed that Charles Lindbergh Jr. was being held on a boat called the Nellie near Martha's Vineyard. The Lindbergh family and investigators searched the area. The child was not there. The promise had been a lie, or the kidnapper had deliberately sent them in the wrong direction. For more than a month, the country waited. Then on May 12th, a truck driver and his assistant discovered something in a wooden area near Mount Rose, New Jersey. The body of a small child was partially buried near the highway. The body was badly decomposed. The child had suffered a fatal blow to the head. Charles Lindbergh Jr. was identified. He had been dead since approximately the night he was kidnapped. He had never been on the boat near Martha's Vineyard. He had never been taken far from home. The child the country had been searching for had been only a few miles away. The case was no longer a kidnapping investigation. It was now a murder investigation. The investigation continued for more than 2 years. There was false confessions, false leads, suspicious deaths, public accusations, and endless speculation. But the kidnapper had made one critical mistake. The ransom money could be traced. Much of it had been paid in gold certificates. At the time, those certificates were being removed from circulation. The serial numbers had been recorded. Investigators distributed lists of the bills to banks, businesses, gas station stores, and financial institutions. Every bill became a possible path back to the killer. Then in September of 1934, a gold certificate was used at a Manhattan gas station. The attendant noticed the unusual bill. He wrote down the license plate number of the car belonging to the man who had used it. That license plate led investigators to a German immigrant and carpenter named Bruno Richard. Police stopped Bruno as he left his home. A second ransom bill was found in his possession. Investigators searched his property. They found more than $13,000 in ransom money hidden in the garage and buried beneath the floor. The money was stuffed inside containers and packages. Some of the bills were hidden inside an oil can. Bruno denied kidnapping or killing the child. He claimed the money had been left to him by a deceased business partner. He insisted he was innocent, but investigation believed that they had finally found the man responsible. The arrest created another media storm. Reporters surrounded Bruno's home. Crowds gathered outside the property. People searched through debris for souvenirs. Newsreel cameras recorded every moment. The country has spent more than 2 years waiting for an arrest. Now America wanted a conviction. Bruno's trial began in Flemington, New Jersey in January 1935. The prosecution presented the ransom money. They presented handwriting evidence. They presented testimony from Dr. Condon, who claimed Bruno resembled the man he had met in the cemetery. They also presented evidence involving the homemade ladder. Prosecutors argued that the ladder had been built by someone with knowledge of carpentry. They argued that the evidence led directly to Bruno. The defense maintained that the case was built on pressure, emotion, and circumstantial evidence. The trial became one of the most heavily publicized proceedings in American history. Every detail was reported. Every witness was examined by the press. Every expression on Bruno's face became part of the national conversation. The jury returned a guilty verdict. Bruno was sentenced to death. Bruno continued to deny responsibility. He was executed by electric chair on April 3rd, 1936. But the conviction did not end the controversy. Questions remained about the evidence. Questions remained about the handling of the ransom money. Questions remained about the ladder. Questions remained about whether Bruno acted alone. Some researchers later argued that the evidence had been overstated. Others believed the case against Bruno was strong. The public pressure had been enormous. The Lindbergh family wanted justice. The police wanted an arrest. The country wanted the mystery to end. But wanting an answer does not always guarantee that every question has been answered. The Lindbergh case remains one of America's most debated criminal investigations because the evidence pointed in one direction while the unanswered questions continued pointing in another. The man convicted was executed. The child was never brought home alive. And the person who took him changed the entire country before disappearing forever. The kidnapping also changed American law. Before the Lindbergh case, kidnapping was primarily handled by state authorities. If a victim was taken across state lines, investigators faced serious jurisdictional problems. The Lindbergh kidnapping exposed that weakness. In response, Congress passed the Federal Kidnapping Act in 1932. The law made a federal crime to transport a kidnapped person across state lines. It became known as the Lindbergh Law. The case also transformed the way Americans consumed crime. Newspapers competed for every new detail. Photograph, headlines, radio reports, and newsreels turned a private tragedy into a national spectacle. The Lindberghs had wanted privacy. Instead, their grief became public property. The case proved that celebrity could bring attention to a crime, but attention could also create confusion, pressure, and exploitation. The Lindbergh kidnapping was not the boy in the box case. That phrase belongs to a separate Philadelphia murder from 1957. But the Lindbergh kidnapping was the earliest American crimes to become a true national media obsession. A 20-month-old child disappeared from a second-floor nursery. A ransom note promised his return. A body was found nearby. A fortune in marked money led investigators to Bruno Richard. and a grieving family was forced to watch the entire country turn their loss into a spectacle. Charles Lindbergh Jr. never had the chance to grow up. His name became attached to a crime that changed the law, transformed the media, and frightened millions of American parents.